I'm wandering in a grave. The dead here have no crosses, nor tombstones, nor wreaths to sing of their past glory, but lie in rotten, decayed, rusty heaps, their innards ripped out by greedy, vulturous hands, their vast, vacant skeletons sadly sighing to the sky. The rust on their bodies is the color of dried blood. Dried blood. I'm reminded of an elephant's secret burial ground. Yes. Cette air de mystère. Cette essence de l'irréel. These cars are trying to communicate. Oh, cars! Are you trying to tell me something? Are you trying to convey to me some secret? Oh, excuse me. I thought I was completely alone here. How embarrassing.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Layer Kicker. Coen brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel. Alvin and the Chipmunks, even other squeak. So many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, Piggly Wigglies, and Maxwell Housers. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode, we are in the Volunteer State. This state is known for its country music scene, underground waterfalls, and sweet treats, seeing as how it's the birthplace of cotton candy, moon pies, and Mountain Dew.
I love
in this
moon
landlocked
pies.
state. You like moon pies?
I could not hold that in. I'm sorry to break your flow. I never do that. But fuck, I love moon pies.
I'm so thrown right now. All right. Getting back into it, in this landlocked state, it is illegal to fire a gun at a whale out of a moving car or lasso a fish, but it's completely legal to collect roadkill for your evening dinner. Come here for Graceland and Dollywood, stay for the Grand Ole Opry and the Parthenon, both of which are featured in the 1975 Robert Altman classic Nashville. That's right, this week we're in Tennessee. Dan, you've told us before about your experiences visiting Elvis landmarks on the podcast. What non-Elvis memories do you have visiting the Volunteer State?
So, just to kind of bring back some context here, I was in Tennessee because I was on tour with a children's theater company playing the mischievous, slightly villainous tax collector in a production of Rumpelstiltskin.
Cool.
And my tour, this was not like a classy, like we're only playing the big cities tours. It was like we were in a lot of rural places. So a lot of places that I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah.
So I went to Tennessee on that tour, and a lot of my experience with Tennessee was mostly driving through areas of Tennessee and we stayed outside of Nashville. So we stayed like around Nashville, but we didn't really like sightsee in Nashville. Like, I think we took a drive and to go past the Opry.
Oh, okay.
And
kind of like a Big Ben Parliament,
yes,
like just passing by situation.
Yes, precisely. So we did that. I remember, I'm like, what do I remember? I'm like, I remember going to this, and mind you, this was 2001, like 2002. So, I remember going, shopping for used CDs and,
yeah,
going through the, going through the used bins at CD shops at these little shopping centers, which really could have been anywhere. But like, for some reason, I'm like, oh, I remember going to this one in Nashville, and if I went through my like giant binder of the CDs that I still have, which is stored in my classroom at school, it is, I could probably tell you what I bought there. I remember I bought one of the things I bought there was a compilation. Actually, I think it was like a big 80s compilation or or like totally, it wasn't totally 80s. I remember it had In a Big Country on it.
Okay.
So anyway, speaking of country.
Hold on, I'm going to interject really quick.
Yes.
Just thinking about your CD collection and like thinking about which ones you purchased in Nashville, or at least on that journey, it reminds me of in High Fidelity how he coordinates his records autobiographically.
Yes, that one of the many things about High Fidelity that I find highly relatable.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I could go through that CD booklet and like I can visualize the store. Like if I could hook up a printer to my brain and print I could print an accurate image of the interior of that store. So, and I remember buying that 80s compilation and I feel like I got something like something else. I want to say it was a best of, and I'm not gonna go back any further into the memory. I feel like I'm Harry Potter dipping into the pensieve.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway,
you have the like wand to your forehead and you're like pulling out and it's like the totally 80s compilation.
Yeah, in a big country. Easy, Harry. And the funny thing is that on this tour was when I read the first 4 Harry Potter books, which had come out prior to this. I think the 4th one had come out in the summer of 2001, like early summer 2001. But I had dismissed the Harry Potter books as fantasy and stuff for kids and that I wasn't into. And then on this tour, I read those books. So.
Got it.
Anyway, speaking of...
You're working in children's theater at the time, so it's like...
Yes.
Dip into that mindset.
Exactly. No, and I remember I had a roommate who said... it was one of these weekends where we were staying. This was not in Tennessee. But actually, I remember going to a used bookstore and that I'm pretty sure was in Tennessee and buying... I remember specifically looking for books that like I was either supposed to read in high school, but really didn't, or books that like I tried to read, but couldn't really get. And I was like, okay, like I've got a college degree now, you know, let me get back into this. So I remember like going to this used bookstore. I love used bookstores as well. So,
totally.
Yeah. I love getting outdated like editions, like the movie tie-in edition of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was it was the Ken Kesey novel, but the cover was with Jack Nicholson.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a novelization of a book that was adapted from a book.
Right. But it was like now a major motion picture starring Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
So getting back to Nashville.
Although we can have a little tie-in to Cuckoo's Nest when we get into the movie Nashville.
Oh, fabulous. So, but getting back to my experiences in Tennessee, like I remember it was the weekend that we were staying near Memphis. It was really rainy, and that was why we didn't go to Beale Street. So I have no stories of Beale Street. I don't know that we had the time or the means to go to the Grand Ole Opry or to go to Dollywood. Yeah. I don't remember being near. I don't know where Dollywood is in comparison to like the Nashville area or the Memphis area. There were a lot of other places in Tennessee where we stayed, but that was mainly it. And Graceland was really the only tourist attraction that I saw or that I experienced in Tennessee.
Yeah, you're also with a big group of people. Well, not a huge group of people, but you're with a group of people. You can't, you got to stick with the group. And
yeah, and like, we were there, we were working, and we were also like, we weren't getting paid like a ton. This was not a union job.
Right.
So it was a learning experience, and it was a great thing to have on my resume. But
Sure.
and it took me to places that I would not have seen otherwise, and I have not made it.
I think it's worth it for that alone.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Just all of the rural parts of the southeastern states, excepting Florida. We did not have shows in Florida, but we went as far west as Texas and as far north as I want to say Tennessee.
So,
Tennessee.
for anybody who hasn't been listening or following what we're doing in this series of episodes, we're doing a 52 episode stretch covering each U.S. state plus D.C. and Puerto Rico. And Dan's travels into the South came up during our our Kentucky episode.
Right, and that was the northernmost point.
Right, our Kentucky episode
of that tour,
and also in our Louisiana episode, and also our Mississippi episode.
Georgia.
I think it came up a little bit.
Yeah, we didn't. We did not have shows in South Carolina or North Carolina or Virginia, but we did. And nor do I remember us having any shows in Oklahoma or Arkansas, but we did Texas, Louisiana, where it was based, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky.
There you go.
So spent a lot of time in those states, not necessarily in the major metropolitan areas. Sometimes if we got lucky enough, we would visit, we would take a detour for a weekend. Like we stayed in Savannah, Georgia, or the weekend that we stayed near Memphis. Cool. I think it was kind of like hey, if we stay here, we can, see a little bit of Memphis. So that's my Tennessee experience. John, have you been to Tennessee?
Never been. I'd love to go. I mean, I'd love to visit Nashville. It seems just like a really cool place to visit. I'm not like a huge country music fan by any means, but I feel like if I were there, I would certainly enjoy the culture and like the just appreciation that the city has for music in general.
Yeah.
And it's just like a really exciting breeding ground for younger musicians, which is cool. And it's not necessarily country music too. Did you ever watch the show Nashville with Connie Britton and Hayden Panettiere?
Who came up on our last episode.
Did she?
When were we talking about Heroes? When we were talking.
Oh yeah.
Was that on the, was that in the episode?
Either that was on the last episode or it was after we stopped recording.
Yeah. So one way or the other, you and I have talked about Hayden. So yes, I remember watching the first, maybe the first couple of episodes. And then I was like,
it's a good show. I mean, it's a soap,
right?
And but some of it has like really good music. I mean, I think most of the music was written or at least produced by T-Bone Burnett, and a lot of it's like really solid, and it covers a lot of the different, styles of country music that there are, and when you watch the movie Nashville, it's like they both cover all of that territory so well, where it's just like there is not just one type of country music. There is not just one type of music that comes through Nashville.
Right.
It is, a wide range of experiences that you would have sonically.
And people and people involved.
And personalities.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. Quite a cast of characters.
Talking about a cast of characters, let's talk about the movie Nashville. Dan, what's your experience with the movie?
So Nashville is another one of those movies that had a reputation of being being this masterpiece, and a very another one of those key films of the 70s, which I talked about with Badlands, that I at a certain point in my life, and honestly, like that, I say at a certain point in my life as though it has ended. But when I started really seeking out the cinema of the 1970s, and there's also like, even now, especially with high definition transfers, I love watching films that were filmed in the 1970s. I love the look. Like Badlands was beautiful, and Nashville as well. Like Badlands is, known for its cinematography, but just the look of those 1970s movies where, they're made on film. They're not digital, but they have this dimension and this, like, they pop off the screen the way that
there's a warmth to
movies
them.
don't. Yeah. A depth rather than like a dimension, like where that they've got like just this depth. Anyway, getting back to it, I don't remember when I first watched Nashville, and honestly, I don't think that I necessarily made it through it the first time I watched it or attempted.
It's
to
long.
watch it.
It's not. The pace takes its time,
and especially it. So I'd been getting into Robert Altman's films, and I think that maybe the first time I really sat down and watched it in a sitting was several summers ago when my wife and our daughter took a trip and went to see family in Europe, and I stayed behind. I think
doing America things, watching Nashville.
Exactly. Hey, you had to celebrate America. My wife, maybe I did watch it on the 4th of July. I don't remember.
We are recording this. This episode's not coming out for a few weeks. We are recording this on 4th of July Eve, essentially.
Yes. Absolutely. Tis the 3rd.
Feels appropriate.
Tis the 3rd. So I remember being interested in Nashville and being interested in Altman because I had seen The Player. I think The Player was what really got me into. I had seen Popeye, of course, as a kid, and we have a whole episode on Popeye.
Oh, totally.
But like The Player really got me hooked, and I know it doesn't fall under the same category in terms of the respect it gets, but Ready to Wear, Pret-a-Porter, which was his follow-up to The Player. I was really into that. That came out when I was in high school, and like Eni Kamosi, Here Come the Hot Stepper was on the soundtrack. It had like, it had a big soundtrack. I remember I had the soundtrack to that. And
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, there are some tunes from that soundtrack that I don't still have the CD, but there are certain songs I'll still go to from that and listen to.
And in between that and Popeye and like Nashville, the soundtracks play such a big role.
Oh, yeah.
And are so instrumental. I mean, this is a pseudo musical. Popeye is a straight up musical.
Right. Popeye's a straight up musical. This is a movie about music that has musical, that has.
I think there's like an hour. If you edited away everything else, it's like an hour of just music performances.
I mean, probably, and we'll come back to it. So I'll get to the end of my Nashville spiel here, but I watched it. So that summer I did a deep dive on Nashville and I tried McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And I remember there were a few, I remember I also went back and did a lot of Lynch that summer because I was like, no one in the house that is going to be overly disturbed by it is going to be here. So like I did Lost Highway and Wild at Heart. Yeah. I think I might have, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So I watched Nashville. And like I said, I don't think that was the first time, but I think that was the first time I watched it really kind of like knowing what to expect and like going back and trying to make sense of certain things.
Got it.
So it's kind of, it's one of those movies where I don't mind going back and watching it because, and I don't think it's like the perfect film. I don't think it's Altman's best. It's not my favorite of Altman's, but it's up there, and it was the film that certainly, like, I think MASH is a really good example of how his style, is like, MASH took his style and like that style fit well with the military, where there's not a moment for, there's not like, people have to be having conversations in the background at the same time. Like, there's no time to wait. Like, I have to have this conversation with you while there's another conversation going on 3 feet away in every direction. So like in MASH, it kind of felt more like it was part of the movie, where in Nashville, it's more like, this is a city where there are a lot of people here who are all in pursuit of something at once, and they need to be relentless about it. So there's a lot going on in that setting. And then I love how it applies to the player when they go to the parties, the big Hollywood parties and screenings at the player, where it's another situation where, like, everybody kind of wants something from somebody here, and it's all kind of urgent. So we don't have time to have like just a conversation over here and just a conversation over here. Like, you need to kind of, if you want to follow what's going on, you need to hear everything.
Have you seen California Split?
No, I have not.
Okay. California Split is fantastic. Elliot Gould, George Segal, that came out in 1974. So right before he made Nashville. And that was the first movie where he really like pioneered the multi-track recording. So the idea of everybody just being mic'd, recording and like having so much going on, and then like in the edit, like boosting the audio for what he wants you to pay attention to in that moment.
Sorry.
That's the first movie where he really like dialed in the idea and then took it to the next level here in Nashville. And it works beautifully in a story where there are such intersecting storylines, where there's kind of at the beginning a big coming together, and then everybody kind of goes apart and crosses paths in one way or another, usually sleeping with Keith Carradine, and then they kind of come together at the end one last time.
Well, they kind of they're like one of those balls that like contracts and then you like pull it out, and because it's kind of like they're all together in one place, whether it's like the traffic jam or the Opry, or they're usually in one place, or they're split into a couple.
So there's like one moment where like some of them are at church while other ones are like doing another thing, and like two of them are off in like a school bus lot. Like there's so much going on. Anyway, I have a synopsis.
Great.
And on our last episode, I think I said that it was going to be a quick one.
Yeah.
The beginning is quick, but it's so necessary to like go into each character. So I have like a couple sentences on each character.
Okay.
And each like main character, because there's a lot of like kind of side characters.
Oh, that makes sense. Like, we'll be talking about them. So yeah.
Yeah. So why don't I just get through all of this, and then we'll come back to a few of them and kind of talk more a little bit about their storylines and their paths during this movie.
Let's.
Under the shadow of a third-party presidential campaign, the lives of top and bottom-tier musicians and the people in their orbit intersect in Nashville over the course of a few days. And wow, what a group of characters we meet. Haven Hamilton, a flashy Americana artist who considers himself a leader to his contemporaries, is also quite proud of his Harvard Law graduate son, Bud, who, despite having a buttery voice and not-so-buttery face, is not an aspiring singer. Barbara Jean is probably the biggest female country star, but questions about her physical and mental health leave her fans concerned and confused, despite her husband Barnett's efforts to protect her appearance and ego. Aside from her questionable health, Barbara Jean's biggest threat is Connie White, a crowd-pleasing entertainer who is never to share a stage with Barbara Jean. Barbara Jean also has many admirers, like Private Glenn Kelly, who claims that his mother saved Barbara Jean's life during an incident involving a fire. Del Reese is an attorney representing stars like Haven and Barbara Jean, but he also has been working with John Triplett, a staffer for presidential candidate Hal Philip Walker, to fundraise and organize a star-studded political rally. Dell's wife Linnea sings with a gospel choir, but her heart is at home raising their 2 deaf children. Linnea also has an admirer, Tom, who is in Nashville to record his first solo album, though he rose to fame with his trio. The others in his group are an unhappily married couple, Bill and Mary. What Bill doesn't know is that Mary is sleeping with Tom. Also sleeping with Tom is Opal, an alleged reporter with the BBC who is doing a story about Nashville. She, along with the mysterious Tricycle Man, seem to wander about Nashville, finding themselves as the connective tissue amongst its rising and falling stars. Tricycle Man at one point catches the attention of L.A. Joan, a visitor who is more interested in visiting the beds of the town's talent rather than the hospital bed of her ailing aunt, despite the wishes of her uncle, who happens to be renting a room to the mysterious Kenny, who is passing through town with nothing except his violin case. Kenny shares a bit of time with another loner, Winifred, who goes by the stage name Albuquerque. Albuquerque does all she can to escape her country music-hating husband and make a name for herself as a performer. One other aspiring performer who crosses paths with Tricycle Man is Sue Ellen Gay, a waitress by day and wannabe singer by night. But what she doesn't know is that the talent bookers are more interested in her body than her voice. All right, so Dan, as far as like core people go, did I really miss anybody there?
No.
Yeah.
No, not that I can think of.
So some of the other people who I didn't mention are Lady Pearl, who's Haven Hamilton's, I don't know if it ever says wife or what their relation is, but she's hilarious. She's completely fixated on the Kennedy assassination and John F. Kennedy in general, I think. Timothy Brown is Tommy Brown, who is the one black singer who we see. The
only other, you've got one other like featured black character who's Wade, who the manager of the diner where Suleen Gay works, and I guess he's also like her manager. But he pops up everywhere, and I know. Were you thinking he looks familiar?
Go on.
So the actor is Robert Doquy. I'm not sure if we're pronouncing it French, but who you might recognize as the captain from all 3 RoboCop movies.
Amazing! What a legacy to have.
I mean, wow. Like, if only RoboCop, Dianu, you know?
I can picture him in the beginning of, like, the first RoboCop when he's, like, first walking into the precinct and being introduced around and meeting everybody. That's where I can picture him. There's also, and I don't know the name of the actor, but there's the character Trout. And then there's Frog. So Trout is the guy who runs the bar where Suleen Gay is singing.
And so the actor's name is Merle Kilgore. And
what a name.
Well, and he was given the name Trout as a Kurt Vonnegut reference, Kilgore Trout.
Amazing.
So, and I happen to be rereading Slaughterhouse-5 at the moment.
Oh, it's so good.
I'd like to say I would have caught that either way.
So, and the actor who plays Frog, he also was like the music director and co-wrote a lot of the songs that are in the movie.
Oh yeah, he's the piano player that Haven gets pissed off at.
So good. Yeah, so the movie opens and we see Haven recording this like patriotic, like the sad patriotic song, and Haven, who's played by Henry Gibson, who I have grown to love so much.
He's wonderful in this. He's so good.
He's perfect. So he wears these nudie suits, and he's the like Nashville like Grand Ole Opry kind of guy who you really think of. You know, he's got like some weird wig on, and he's fantastic.
He's the guy who's a big deal within Nashville's city limits.
Yes.
Outside of Nashville city limits, not so much.
He's the person whose record you see at Goodwill.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're just like, what is this guy? And then you bring it home and you hear like the 200 Years song, which he wrote. And it's fantastic.
Well, yeah. I heard Altman had them all write their own songs.
So I watched, and as you know, this is quite a commitment because the movie itself is so long, but I also watched it with commentary. I watched a behind the scene, like a making of documentary, a bunch of different interviews with Altman. And yeah, a lot of them wrote songs, some of them for the movie, like that was written for the movie. Others, like Keith Carradine, wrote I'm Easy, and also the song that's at the end when That's All Right by Me, or That's Okay with Me.
It Don't Bother Me.
It Don't Bother Me, that's it. He wrote that, but I think that those were written before the movie, and it was like, hey, I've got these songs. And what's his name? The guy... I'm looking to see. It's Haven Hamilton's son. I'm just looking for the actor's name.
Oh, geez. Let me see.
Dave Peel. So
yes.
like he sings this one song to Opal, Geraldine Chaplin, and like that's a song that he wrote. I have all of my, like, I wish that there was an easier way to organize all of the like cast list that I have in front of me. But
it's tricky with this.
But
one.
Ronnie Blakely, who plays Barbara Jean, like she wrote the songs that her character sings, but she wasn't cast in the role. That role was originally going to go to Louise Fletcher of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but backed out at the last minute.
Wait, I heard that Louise Fletcher was going to play Lily Tomlin's role.
Oh, no, you're right. She was going to play Lily Tomlin's role. You're right.
Right, and also that Lily Tomlin had turned down Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, my source is not the Criterion Collection; it's IMDb's trivia. So,
well, I know that Louise Fletcher. You're right. She backed out of playing Linnea, which I think clearly Lily Tomlin, who was nominated for the Academy Award, was amazing.
Her
first
film
movie.
Debut,
and she's so good.
Out of the gate, of course.
Yeah, but Ronnie Blakely was a replacement also, and she was so good. She's so good.
Yeah. She's so good. And I read that the character was based loosely on Loretta Lynn.
So as she says, it's a kind of a combination of Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton.
Like the fame of Dolly Parton and the fragility of Loretta Lynn.
Yeah, I suppose if you're going to break down and do the math on it.
Or the fame of Loretta Lynn.
Yeah, exactly. Ronnie Blakely basically just said that it's kind of a combination of the two of them. And I think that also you can kind of see for like the Dolly Parton of it all, although 1975 Dolly Parton, I think also like the fandom and the connection that she has with the fans. I think that there's a lot to that also. And she's fantastic. Ronnie Blakely is so good.
She is wonderful. The scene when she and something else, and this might lead us off in another direction because there's something else that I wanted to talk about that this connects to. But the scene when she's singing outside, it's like on the Opry like riverboat set.
Oh yeah, when she loses her mind.
Well, and she just starts talking and going off on tangents in the middle of a concert, and how the band is playing, and it's something, and we can come back to it in a moment. But there are so many of these moments that the term, I don't think the people were using the term at that time in this way, but are so cringe, very, very awkward. A
So
lot of them.
I had a bit of a theory about that moment. And so, we were saying earlier that the characters of Barbara Jean and Connie White, they're kind of rivals where I think that the line that Haven says about them is that like Connie can replace Barbara Jean. They can never perform at the same time. Like there's these rules about them and their rivalry.
Right.
And my theory is that because Connie White replaces Barbara Jean because she has, this incident where she is hospitalized and like exhaustion, I think is what people would call it at certain times. But wait, just 1 second. So my theory is that Barbara Jean and her husband are listening to that performance on the radio. And you hear Connie White like talking to kids in the audience and things like that between songs. And I feel like Barbara Jean is like trying to do something like that, but just gets lost and loses the thread completely when she's trying to do it. No one ever talks about it in any of the things that I watch, but it was kind of like my theory about like why that happened.
Oh,
does that make sense or what?
That does make sense. That makes a lot of sense. But that's not her thing. That's not her shtick. So it doesn't. You see, the way I looked at it. So I feel like every time I've seen it, I've always wondered, like, okay, why was she? Like, where is she flying back from? And like they say, it's a burn center in Maryland. So like a burn. And I don't think I had ever caught before because I'd always been like, was there really a fire? Or is that just like one of the stories that they tell? But then it's that Scott Glenn's character, was it his grandmother or his aunt?
His mom, I think. His
mom or someone who lived next door and like saved her from the fire. Or like, so that kind of confirmed it that it was a fire, but then I asked myself, well, how did the fire start?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And like, because Barbara Jean seems like so, like, there's this unpredictability about her.
Yeah.
That makes, did she start the fire?
That's a good question.
Not going to go into a "we didn't start the fire" reference because I did that on the last episode.
You certainly did.
So.
Yeah, although if this were true events, certainly the incident at the end would have made the song.
Barbara Jean blown.
Spoiler alert.
Kenny shoots Barbara Jean at the Parthenon concert.
Oh, wait, what else do I have to say?
The movie really is about a politically driven assassination. A non-politician assassination that's perhaps because of political reasons.
Well, and it's so weird. And if we want to talk about that now, let's talk about that now. I feel like there was, we can
weave all around, Dan, because that's the nature of an Altman movie.
That's true. But, because that's the other question I always have is I'm like, all right, they're definitely building it up to be like a political assassination. But I'm also watching it from these I'm like, you have to remember this is coming out in 1975 and we don't have, we're 6 years away from John Hinckley shooting President Reagan. And this guy kind of has a John Hinckley vibe to him. And he also shoots Barbara Jean and it's kind of like it mirrors how he shot Reagan to get Jodie Foster's attention. Hinckley that is.
Way. So
now,
yeah. And this movie was talked about a lot when John Lennon was shot. Because it was
he's got a Mark David Chapman vibe.
He's got a Mark David Chapman vibe, pre-Mark David Chapman being anything other than just a regular guy.
Yes.
But when John Lennon was shot, people were calling the news people were like calling Robert Altman, being like, "Do you feel responsible for any of this. And he's like, why would I feel responsible? Like, do you feel responsible for not like seeing my warning? It's like, this could happen. Because prior to that, if somebody was killed, it was just murder. But, this is more of like an assassination.
Well, you didn't necessarily have
we don't really know.
Celebrity assassinations. I mean, outside of the gossip columns, that is.
Hey-o.
But like, yeah, I'm trying to think like who was the first, because politicians, I mean, it was Nashville. You're also hot on the heels of George Wallace being shot on the, which another thing that I'm doing, listening to the audiobook of Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, 1972. So that's fresh on the brain. But like, yeah, so George Wallace gets shot in 72. You've got Kennedy in 68. You've got King in 68. You've got, Kennedy in 63. And then, you have all the other, every other,
the more historical,
I'm like, you got Malcolm X, you've got all the civil rights leaders.
Right.
So like you have a lot of political assassinations, but do you have any like attempts on celebrities? And I feel like
celebrity wasn't the same. At this point, the mid 70s, was really starting to kind of pick up. I mean, once like Elvis and the Beatles came out, then you started to really have, celebrity musicians.
Right.
And there certainly were very popular musicians, but none that had the hysteria. Like that really set off the way that we see these like Taylor Swifts now and Beyonce's.
Right.
Yeah. Because prior to that, it was like, that's Scott Joplin. I'm going to, I don't know, like, what are you going to do? Like, Mozart. If you're Salieri.
Yes, there, rivalry there. Biggie and it was the original Biggie and Tupac.
Yeah.
But with the, and then I'm thinking of celebrity, and of course I have to make notes for when we eventually do The Bodyguard.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
But and bringing it back to Nashville though. Yeah. So like what?
Well, that's bringing it back to The Big Chill because that's Lawrence Kasdan who wrote The Bodyguard.
And Kevin Costner.
Right.
A contender for #1 Lawrence Kasdan player.
Yeah.
So, which we have Robert Altman players.
We could talk about that all day. But
when you think about it though, when you think about actors who really pop up in his movies, frequently, it's not as many as Lawrence Kasdan.
Well,
probably because
Nashville,
Robert Altman makes so many movies, but
sure. Well, for Nashville, you have Shelley Duvall, who is one of the Robert Altman players. I mean, Robert Altman discovered her and gave her her career. And then, of course, you have Elliot Gould playing himself because he just happened to be near the set, and they invited him in and shot a scene. And
just to comment on that, in the movie, they say he's there promoting. He's in town promoting a film, and I'm like, is he promoting The Long Goodbye?
He's probably promoting California Split
or California Split.
Yeah.
Which Robert Altman film that he was in?
Well, what year was The Long Goodbye?
73.
So the California Split is 74.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Elliot Gould, clearly one of the Robert Altman players.
The original, because MASH.
Because MASH, right. But I mean, I'm even thinking once you get to Shortcuts, it's just everybody's in that. Everybody's in the play.
Lily Tomlin is the
She's
third
really good in Shortcuts.
Lily Tomlin is great in Shortcuts, is great in The Player. I think she's in The Player, right?
How could she
not
be
just
in The
as
Player?
herself.
She might be in The Player as herself.
She might be in The Players. She's almost definitely in The Players herself. I couldn't remember if she was playing a character in The Player. And I don't think she's in Pret-a-Porter. But Sally Kellerman is.
Sally Kellerman, who's in MASH.
Right. So, and I can't think if she did any others. Just thinking of, and also Lily Tomlin is in a Prairie Home Companion, which is very good. Also with Kevin Kline.
With Kevin Kline. All right. Well, we could talk about that forever. Yeah. You know, the whole chain of everybody. I have a question for you. And every time I think about this, I think maybe it's somebody else. Dan, who's the most tragic character in Nashville?
Oh.
Who do you think is the most tragic character in Nashville?
The most tragic character in Nashville is, I mean, it's hard to not say Barbara Jean. And it's kind of like, I go Barbara Jean and then I go Suleen Gay, but I'm like, I don't feel like Suleen Gay is as tragic. I feel like it's tragic, but like for Suleen Gay, there's an upswing because someone is finally honest with her and someone like Wade finally tells her, like, you can't sing.
Right.
Like, you're not, this is not like, I understand you have passion, but you don't have the talent for this.
Glenn Wells, who plays Suleen Gay, by the way, is phenomenal.
Yes. She's so good.
Yeah.
She's so good. Who do you think is the most tragic character?
So my first thought was Suleen Gay. You know, this person who all she wants to do is be this, you know, singing star, and nobody up until the very end tells her you cannot sing to save your life. Also, and the way that she cannot sing is amazing. Like, you cannot Yeah, there's no way to fake that. It's incredible. And
although
the way that she's humiliated.
Oh, it's terrible. It's
terrible.
It's what it again of the awkward moments, but this
there's a moment when you see Ned Beatty's face where you're just like, this reminds me of that movie Deliverance and how humiliated that guy was.
Oh,
anyway,
oink oink.
But so at first it was Suleen Gay, and then I was thinking Barbara Jean, because clearly that's such a tragic end. And then I was thinking of Linnea and how, you know, she has these children who are her heart. And yes, she does sing with this gospel choir, which feels very strange. And it's like, she's probably only there because her husband made some sort of deal that kind of got her into you know, it's like, there's clearly her heart's not in that. She absolutely loves her children. And, you know, she's in this marriage that doesn't look like a very happy marriage. And of course, when she finally succumbs to Tom's advances, you know, you get to really like see how difficult of a life she has. And then I was thinking, is Tom the most tragic character? Because that man he's got some problems. He's got some huge problems. Like, he is just like, if he doesn't have a woman with him, and also it's like, whenever he's with a woman, whether it's, you know, Opal or it's Mary, who's like saying how much she loves him, and he's either asleep or pretending to be asleep. I think he's pretending, so he doesn't have to engage in the conversation. And the only
L.A. Joan, he sleeps with her.
He sleeps with her. We don't ever like see. We only ever see just like when he's singing I'm Easy and it goes over to her, you can see like, oh, they must have had a thing.
I think we see her go off with him. But we see her go off with, well, she's like she's not the equivalent because she's less tragic, whereas Tom definitely feels like stuck in this, though I don't feel like Tom is tragic because it's also like, you can grow up. Like,
I feel like there's an element to him where it's like, this man, without getting the help that he needs, just will never be happy. Because the only time that we see him like engaged is when he's in bed talking to Linnea, and she's teaching him sign language, and when she was like saying, do you want to learn to sign something? The thing that he requests is, how do you say I love you? Right. And it's like, you know, that's the only time when you see, but that's the one person that he really can't have. And so I don't know. I mean,
because she gets up to go, but then also before she even leaves the room, he's on the phone with, is that his wife?
In like the commentary and stuff, they say that it's his girlfriend. But she clearly lives like in New York or something.
But I feel like he also says something about the kids.
Oh, I don't remember. I mean, there's so much going on in that scene that I don't hang on every word, but it's completely possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me see if I don't think I. I also love how at the end at the Parthenon you see L.A. Jane walking up with Bill and Mary and Tom. Oh well, of course, because
it's just so funny. It's like
that was great.
It's just great because it's like, oh yeah, it's like the one other person you haven't seen her with.
Right. And he's only been with Mary the whole time, whereas she's constantly thinking, I mean, Mary could be the most tragic figure because she's in this showbiz. And you know what? In the synopsis, you were saying that Tom was there to record a solo album.
Right.
I guess I had been under the impression that the three of them were there to record an album.
So he says that he's there to record a solo album. And when he's introduced on stage, they're saying, and like he's saying, like, I used to play with this group. And Bill's like, I didn't realize there was a used to. Like, there's and so also anytime that you see that Tom is in bed with somebody, they're playing like a different version of the recording of I'm Easy. So theoretically, they're recording that song and like listening back to the different takes and stuff. So, and he's got some like microphones in the room and stuff too. So I think that there was a line somewhere in there about him recording a solo album.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I didn't catch every word.
It's a dense movie. It's a dense movie.
Yeah. There's a lot going on. And I mean, this is now maybe the fourth time I've seen it.
And there's so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about, we mentioned some people who were possibly going to be in the movie. I just want to mention a few quick other ones. So instead of Henry Gibson, it was originally supposed to be Robert Duvall. Would have been a very different movie. And Keith Carradine was originally supposed to play Bill, and Gary Busey was supposed to play Tom. That would have been a different movie. Not that he was the Gary Busey that he grew into, but...
No. This is early Gary Busey. Yeah. This is pre-motorcycle accident sans helmet Gary Busey.
This is pre-Point Break Under Siege.
Oh, yeah. Yes. No. This is pre-Buddy Holly.
Pre-Buddy Holly. Busey. That's right.
Yeah. So, anyone else?
Oh, those were the main ones that came to mind. It's just like they would have been such different movies if it was like Robert Duvall instead of Henry Gibson.
Oh yeah, no, and I as much as I love Robert Duvall, I would not trade anyone for Henry Gibson. But just to I want to circle back briefly, just to make a point where the scene that we were talking about where Tom plays I'm Easy and you see the faces of the women he's been with throughout the film. It is one of those moments that like, I think this movie, when people think of this movie, they think, oh, it's one of those Altman things where it's just like everybody's talking at once and we're just going around and we're hearing everything. But this is one of those moments that really shows it shows the filmmaking and really shows the art. And because like, really that style is about the connections and just about connection. And this is one of those moments that without spoken dialogue, really just with the music and the camera and the acting, you see
the face acting.
You see each of these women responding and going from the arc of from he's singing this to me to he's not singing it to me to he's singing it to her.
Yeah, and it's kind of like he's singing it to her.
Right.
You know,
yes.
like they're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's not looking
The
at me, he's
housewife.
looking through me. And
Right. Yes.
and also
Yes.
for a Robert Altman movie where historically, you know, there's so much going on and you hear all these other conversations, it's the one time in a movie where all you hear is this very simple acoustic guitar, the like James Taylor like voice. It's really, really sweet. It's a very powerful moment.
And when you see, when he is connecting, when he and Lily Tomlin are locking eyes, and that's what everyone sees in, like, you really get it from Geraldine Chaplin, who we should talk about her performance.
My God.
But
so good.
you see it, you really see the disappointment with her and with Mary.
Yeah. Well, Mary for sure. I think that L.A. Jane is just like, oh, well, on to the next one.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Like the next one in the group.
Yeah. I think that all of them do such incredible jobs, like, you know, showing you exactly what they're thinking just with their faces. But Lily Tomlin, in every scene that she's in where she's listening, you really feel like this person is having an experience right now. When she's with her children and her son is telling her about his experience at his swim class and everything, and the way that she connects with people just by, you know, through her love and, you know, just by listening, it's really powerful and incredible that this was her first movie.
You know, and it makes me wonder now, like, does she sleep with Tom not for herself, but for him? She like, he really seems like he needs this right now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think in some ways it's also just like, okay, I'm going to go see him perform just to like get him to stop calling, maybe, you know, because he's like harassing her at home by calling. And from what we could tell, I don't think that they had been together in the past, but like there was a flirtation when he was in town recording another time and like she was in the booth. And, you know, clearly she had an impact on him, probably because she didn't succumb to his advances at the time. And, you know, he wouldn't relent.
Yeah, no, he's clearly not into someone who's going to fawn all over him and, you know, write "I love you" in lipstick on the mirror, which that definitely, you know, you feel bad for Mary. For Mary, you're just like, oh, yeah,
totally. And you know, not for nothing, but Keith Carradine and the actress who played Mary, who I'm looking to see right now, Christina Rains, they were together at the time. And according to, I think, one of the interviews, I don't know if it was the commentary, but one of the interviews, Robert Altman was saying like there was a moment when they weren't filming where she was kind of like, you know, like going, "I love you" to him. And he was essentially like ignoring her. And he was just like, that's what gave him the idea to put that in the movie. Oh, and so there was a little bit of real life that kind of went into that situation. But also a huge shout out to Alan Nichols, who plays Bill, who's so good. I mean, he captures the essence of like a folk trio performer who's in the unhappy marriage or whatever.
The ultimate third wheel.
Yes. Yeah, totally. He's great. So yeah, let's talk about Geraldine Chaplin for a minute. You know, she's the one who is kind of like the exposition machine who like gets information out of characters by claiming that she's with the BBC. There's no evidence of this. She is perhaps just an opportunist who has a microphone. She's perhaps, you know, these days and age, she'd be a podcaster, but, you know, she's just really flighty and like just attracted to the most famous thing in the room. You know, she's talking to, what's his name?
Is when she's talking to Haven.
She's talking to Bud. Oh, and she sees Elliot Gould.
Oh,
and like,
yeah,
and he's like singing his song, and she's like, "That's Elliot Gould."
Yes. There's a wonderful Haven Hamilton awkward moment in that scene when like Opal won't leave them alone, and she's being really awkward, and Haven's like, get him, like, you can't behave this way around a star. 2 stars.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love Henry
He
Gibson.
puts himself over so well. He's his own biggest fan, and like, I love how self-important he is. How he, like, after Barbara Jean finishes singing and he comes out and he's waving, and he's so funny. But yeah, so Geraldine Chaplin, and then, like, what is with the part when she's like wandering through the junkyard and then the school buses, and like she's just talking to her tape recorder.
So I don't know how this really fits into like the storyline, but I know that was like a location that they would pass every day on the way to like filming whatever. And Altman was just like, ooh, we should film something there. And then, you know, we have her kind of wandering through there, soliloquizing. What's the word that I want to say there? But like, you know, trying to come up with something about, you know, the yellow of the school buses and what it means for the children, and all the like, and thinking like, oh, no. And doing another one. And then you just see like Tricycle Man, like shaving over there. And it's like so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And Tricycle Man is like the other person that he doesn't say a word in this movie, does he?
The irony of the person in this movie that has the most famous voice not saying a single word. Absolutely stunning. I mean, not that he was anything at this point. I mean, he was in Death Wish and maybe 1 or 2 other things a little bit, but like,
right. But he's
I think he was in like California Split for like a line.
Right. But like, he's really featured in this. And I think that's another thing, that if you look at this movie through 1975 eyes and you think about the replacements, like replacing Louise Fletcher with Lily Tomlin, this movie, which kind of comes across as like, it's not documentary style, but it has that feel of that, like, what, cinema verite feel to it. And having these unknown actors, you know, kind of like similarly to Badlands, where you have Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek they both made their debuts in that movie, I think, on film.
Martin Sheen?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. But anyway, you've got in Nashville so many actors. You do have a few actors in this who are well known at the time. Like, I'm pretty sure like Alan Garfield was known, Ned Beatty by this point.
Martin Sheen, was in Catch-22. No Drums, No Bugles.
Okay, all right.
So but you know, probably his first starring role.
Fairly unknown. Sissy Spacek, totally unknown in that. Right. And then in Nashville, you have all. I would say, Henry Gibson. Well, I guess Laugh-In people knew. He was on Laugh-In, right?
And I think he had done some other things, but like.
And that people knew Lily Tomlin from Laugh-In as well.
People knew Lily Tomlin from Laugh-In, the telephone operator. You know, like,
yep,
she's hilarious. Yeah. I mean, this is all Scott Glenn, who's popped up in so many things over the years, you know, really fresh faced in this. You know, Shelley Duvall, I think, was she in Thieves Like Us with Altman?
Was that after this?
Was it after? I thought it was before this. Thieves Like Us. 74. So that was also 74. Yeah, Keith Carradine and Shelley Duvall. Also with Burt Remsen, who plays Albuquerque's husband, who we barely see, but he's there. Also, you know, just to talk about things, and there's a little bit of a time gap in this one, but you know, this movie from 1975 references Easy Rider, which came out a few years before, not like right before, but a few years before, but also with Karen Black in it. So those are the ones that I always find really funny, when like there's an actor that's in a movie that's referenced in a movie, where it's like, oh, Are they just like, does Connie White really looks like that lady in Easy Rider?
Yeah. It's the same universe.
Yeah.
Nashville takes place in the Easy Rider universe. That's fantastic.
Well, Lily Tomlin is talking to somebody about the Tricycle Man's motorcycle, and he's like, yeah, she's like, ever since Easy Rider, everyone's been driving those things around, and yeah,
Tricycle Man. Yeah, he's so, and like he does magic.
Yeah, he just like close up magic.
Goldblum in that, he's wonderful.
He's, he can pull it off so well. Well, and it's also funny because like he's, such a big like musical talent. He's got his jazz group that he plays with and his jazz albums, but like he doesn't do any music in this movie.
No, well, and he's one as a character who does awkward so well, as we saw in The Big Chill. He's a character. He's one of the few characters who does not have an awkward moment in this.
Very confident, just going about life, doing his thing on his own terms, on his weird tricycle.
I made a list of the characters who just have super awkward moments throughout the movie. And one character who we haven't talked about, played by David Arkin, Norm, the chauffeur, Norman, the chauffeur.
Oh, for Bill and Mary and Tom.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Who is trying to talk to Opal, and Opal's just so rude to him. Yeah.
Cause he's nothing.
Right.
There's also the moment when I think it's Tom like hands him a guitar and he's like, here, go write a hit song. And he just like starts noodling on the guitar and stuff. And the camera stays on him. It's so funny.
Yeah. So he's really awkward. Haven is really awkward and totally oblivious. They're so oblivious to it, but like, Haven is he's so awkward, but he's a great character. He's a great character.
And also when
spoiler alert,
Barbara Jean gets shot, he goes right in there. He gets shot too, but he doesn't run from it. He's there to help. He's, it's a completely selfless act to kind of be there for her. And I feel like that it seems a little against character, but I think that he does have kind of that nurturing father figure quality to him that he sees that maybe not everybody else sees.
Well, and another thing about him in that scene, and it kind of ties it back, and one of, the theme of assassination in this movie about how he says, this isn't Dallas, it's Nashville. And how even and I know I was kind of mocking him before saying he's a big deal within Nashville city limits and nowhere else. But like you said, he's got this he's not just a father figure to Barbara Jean. So he's like Nashville's father figure. So him addressing the crowd and saying, but also like you talked before about how much music means to this city. And that was something that I had written down as like, it is what keeps Nashville going. Like this tragedy happens. And of course, like Scott Glenn, the, Army veteran is standing right there to disarm Kenny.
Yeah.
But
weird that Kenny didn't move away from him.
Well, it's also like, but you see the look in Kenny's face before, like when Barbara Jean comes out, and it, it's like he's almost, you can tell he's just like, he's not in his right mind. And he gets disarmed, but like the whole crowd is disrupted, and this is, tragic. You've got like someone who's the combination of Dolly Parton and Loretta Lynn. So, the holy first lady of country music gets shot down, especially after she starts the movie coming back from recovering from this fire, which starts who knows how. But then she passes out with exhaustion. Then Barnett has to pull her off stage when she starts her storytelling, which I like your theory on that. I think I want to go back and watch those scenes and see if I can see that in the performance. So is this movie saying that like Nashville is a city that runs on music, and if the music keeps going, the city keeps going, and bad things can just kind of fade into the background.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's, Albuquerque gets up there, and this entire movie, it's just like, oh, this woman is such a wreck. And she gets up there, and, it's a little shaky at first, but it's just like, here, somebody sing. And she's there, and she happens to do an awesome job. And then, like,
the choir
gets in,
up.
and they're all doing it, understanding, like, oh my God, I hope that Barbara Jean is okay, but they're just still performing their hearts out anyway.
Because it's what the city needs. And
yeah.
I know you had done some research on the screenwriter Joan Tewksbury.
Yeah.
But I know that this movie evolved because Altman had been offered another project that was set in Nashville, turned down the project, but was really intrigued by setting a film in the city, and had Tewksbury, who was a script supervisor on his films, go to okay, so you've got details. It's a
little different. So United Artists bought this script that takes place in Nashville in the country music scene, presented it to Altman, and he's like, I don't want to do this, but I'd like to do a movie that's set in Nashville. And Joan Tewksbury, who was a script supervisor on was McCabe and Mrs. Miller, but wrote Thieves Like Us already at this point. He sent her down there and was like, just keep a diary of your experiences. And all those things happen, the car crash because a couch falls off a pickup truck and sitting in traffic for 2 hours. And like, there were all these things that happened that she wove into a script. And she did kind of piece it together into an actual script, but, so much of the, actual dialogue comes from the actors. And she kind of got an understanding pretty quickly that it's like, this is a framework. This is not a word for word, recite the lines as they are. And, yeah. So like Barbara Jean's, things, the stuff that she says, like that was all, Ronnie Blakely's idea to do that. And she wrote all the things that she said and basically went to Altman and was just like, can I do this? And
oh, wow.
And he was just like, sure. And he had the idea to kind of break it up into like the 3 different beats where like the song would start and then she'd trail off again, which is, so it's the right way to do it. And, but yeah, Joan Tewksbury, is just like, she's so cool. And, before it started recording, we were saying that she doesn't have like a huge filmography. She does play herself in The Player. But she did direct, her first movie that she directed was Old Boyfriends. Have you ever seen that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Old Boyfriends.
I have not seen that.
It's with Talia Shire. It's not Old Boy. It's Talia Shire and like John Belushi is in it. It's really good. You should check it out.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But it was directed by Joan Tewksbury.
All right.
In 79, I want to say. But yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, Joan Tewksbury didn't do much, but she did do that. And I know that movie is really fascinating. So check that out.
Cool. Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Of course. Dan, I know we could keep on talking about this all day and all night. But is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we move on?
Let me just scroll through my notes here, and I feel like we have covered quite a bit. Oh, do you know what I realized? Just a little, I didn't know this, but that Gwen Wells, who plays Suleen Gay, was married to Harris Yulin.
I saw that online. What a fascinating pairing.
Yeah, Harris Yulin, who we sung the praises of on our Stewart Saves His Family episode.
The always agitated performances of Harris Yulin, so good. And Glenn Wells, she had a very tragic experience with cancer, which she documented. She did a documentary because she didn't get any treatment for it. And she,
right.
She documented everything on film and just such a tragic story. And, you know, from what we see in Nashville, you just think like, man, she could have continued on to have an amazing career. And I don't know what year she died, how old she was, but she certainly could have kept on acting.
Yeah.
And been awesome.
Yeah. No, she, and hang on, I feel like I was just looking at that and of course could not now tell you, but, yeah, I think also just so you mentioned how this movie covers the many types of music that come through Nashville, and we see more of we get the more folk stylings of Bill, Mary, and Tom.
Yeah.
We get the gospel. We get the more traditional, the more like Americana country of Haven Hamilton. The more, I guess, like popular, especially in 1975, mainstream, like Barbara Jean and Connie White.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, you know, Gwen Wells died in 1993. She lived to be 42.
Oof.
Yeah.
Way too young.
Definitely a, you know, tragic story. And, you know, but as you said, you know, she made the choice to not pursue the, you know, traditional treatment.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess one last question one last point to bring up is how the opening credits, if we can call them that, set up the movie.
And it's so funny because you were talking about the music the 80s compilation that you bought in Nashville. And it's like, it's in the style of one of those TV ads for a compilation album.
Right.
And,
which, unfortunately, I feel like we are the last generations to really experience the thrill of watching TV. And this is when not like your network television, but this is when you're watching, you know, the edited for television James Bond movie on, you know, WPIX at 3 p.m. on a Sunday. And you get the commercial for like Monster Ballads or
Pure Moods.
Hair Metal Heaven, Pure Moods. Yes.
Pure Moods is a big one.
Just all the clips and all of the, like all the clips and all the, like the titles going up and, you know, scrolling down the screen, the different artists featuring Fleetwood Mac, Bad Company.
Before we move on, also, I just want to sing the praises of John Triplett, who plays, Michael Murphy, who plays John Triplett. Michael Murphy, who's so good at, you know, he's the duplicitous, like, political organizer who's trying to get this concert going and, you know, trying to convince everybody to take part in it, and just being such like a slime. You know, like a real wolf in sheep's clothing.
He's an Altman regular.
He is an Altman regular. He blends in so well.
Yes, he blends. Also known to blockbuster movie fans, not Blockbuster Video, but Batman Returns fans as the mayor of Gotham in Batman Returns.
Absolutely.
Michael. That's how I first came to know him.
Or should we say the incumbent mayor, since he's running against Oswald Cobblepot? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
And then also, we didn't talk enough about Ned Beatty and his character, Dell. I mean, nobody can look agitated, boiling or hard boiling an egg the way that Ned Beatty can. Trying to be present with his deaf children while clearly, you know, being like, this is not the life I envisioned. And then when he's with the like performers, it's like, this is the life. This is
yeah. Oh yeah. He tries to fit you can tell it's like, oh, you're a hanger on. Like you're not part of the crew. He
doesn't have talent. So he gets in there how he can as their lawyer, working with the political party to get something going.
And you see that even at the end when Linnea is going to join the choir and to sing with Albuquerque, and he's like, nope, I need you to come with me.
Yeah,
He's
sucks.
he's like, I need arm candy. I need a prop.
Yeah. Well, Dan, we've been talking about this for so long. Why don't we talk a little bit about what we would do if we could bring this back? What do you got?
Ah, man, I got nothing. I can't. I'm like, you know what?
It's a tough one.
I think about it and I'm like, I wonder if you could do like a Nashville 50 years later and kind of just do a similar, like, what happens when you put a journalist you send a journalist to Nashville for 48 hours and you just kind of follow them around, and maybe it's a little different. Maybe it's a podcaster. Maybe it's filmed in a different style, but like, I don't know, because I haven't been to, I really haven't experienced the city of Nashville. So I don't know if you would get an experience that's so interconnected where like you have this core group of people that just, go from place to place to place because the city is kind of always hopping and this is what's going on, except for Sunday mornings when it's church time.
Right.
So that's kind of the only thing that I was thinking of was like, what if you kind of just did something like with a similar concept to focus on that city again, and with it's going to be 50 years next year since this movie came out, so that would kind of be my, like, get even more cinema verite with it and do that kind of like, I mean, maybe it's a film, or maybe I'm like, now that I'm imagining it, I'm seeing it more as just like a series of like posts and like TikToks and things like that. It's like, oh, hey, look here, we're at the club and look who's performing. It's Tom from Bill, Mary and Tom.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I that's all I got. That's all I got, John. What do you have?
Well, yes, this is a very tough one. It's such a specific movie that really exists just in its own microcosm, similarly to how Nashville is its own small, like, world of its own, very isolated. Thinking about the television show Nashville, I was thinking that it'd be really fun to do something like a series, but that is like mid-70s Nashville, where it's not just that it takes place then, but also feels a little bit more, like the 1970s, where things are just a little bit less polished. It's a little bit dirtier. The wigs aren't as nice. It's like there's just something else that's like a little bit seedier. A lot of television shows these days, they need to make everything look good. And it's like, no, I want it to look grimy. And I'd love to see just a series that's, 70s Nashville. And, if you want to like incorporate, side conversations where they're just like, oh no, I just saw Haven Hamilton over at the, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And I heard that, Connie White's performing at the Opry. I'm going to stay far away from there, like that kind of a thing where it's like, maybe it exists in the universe, but is like, there's so much other Nashville going on. Like there's the one scene where they're in the bar that Trout works at, and there's like this singing duo that you see at first. And that's the only time you see them. They're totally good. They're a good group. Right. And, but that's it for them. And it's like, oh, well, it's like, what else do they have going on? Like, they're not involved with this political rally that's going to be happening. So like, we don't follow them. Whereas everybody else, that's kind of the point, is that they're the ones that all kind of intersect there.
Right. So like, getting more of the up and comers.
Yeah, and also just some of the people, I mean, and we didn't even talk about him, Keenan Wynn's character, who is L.A. Jane's uncle, whose wife is in the hospital. Another tragic character.
Another contender, yeah.
Right,
wow.
Who storms out of his own wife's funeral because his niece doesn't show up. That's big. That's deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so sweet. He brings he gives flowers to the staff at the hospital, and he has that nice little exchange with Barbara Jean as she's leaving, and she's like, tell your wife I say blah, blah, blah. Like, it's really sweet. So it's like not just the celebrities, but also just the people who live there, and it's just like they maybe have been in Nashville before country music was part of it. And, it's like that world formed around them. So it's almost like in the movie Up, how it's like his house is the one house and there's all these buildings around it because he won't sell his house. And it's just like, all of this happened because I won't leave. Like I was here before it was this. And
right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where my mind was.
That would be cool. I would be really into that.
Yeah.
Like a series.
But you couldn't. But this isn't one that could be remade or given a sequel to or anything like that.
No, but I do. I think it would be interesting though if you were going to your pitch for this series makes me think like you could set it in that world, and you could set it like what if this takes place after Barbara Jean? What if Connie White is a character in it, and what if she's now like the big thing because Barbara, and the movie does not tell us if Barbara Jean survives, but
no, there are certain things that I like about this movie because it doesn't give you too much. We don't find out whether she survives or not. We don't really know what Kenny's motives are. We don't know what he's thinking. We just know that like there's something off about this guy. He looks like Howdy Doody. He's carrying around this violin case, but he's not a country performer. He has that phone call with his mom. That's strange, but like
he drifts around and we don't know with the other characters. We know what they want.
Yeah. Except for Tricycle Man.
Tricycle Man just wants to go from place to place. Tricycle Man just wants to be where the action is.
Yeah. And then the one other thing I love about it is we never see Hal Philip Walker, the political candidate. We hear his voice as the van travels around.
Well, we hear what we assume is his voice.
It's supposed to be his voice. And he is an ever looming presence in all parts of the movie, but we never actually see the guy. We know what he's about because we listen to the speech that's there, and the replacement party, which we know from seeing like news has already won primaries in a bunch of states and stuff. So it's like totally viable. And what Robert Altman is saying is like, this really was like the person that's being described during all this is essentially Jimmy Carter. And it kind of like was the prophecy of Jimmy Carter in a lot of ways. I mean, the funny thing, there are some funny things that are said, as we hear them come out of the speakers that maybe are a little less so, where it's like, nobody knows the words to the national anthem. We need a different national anthem.
Right. Yeah.
Weird one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's the other thing is like, there's moments of this movie that feel more satirical than others. That feel more obviously satirical than others.
Yeah.
That being one of them.
Well, and that's, it's a third party candidate, but it's a liberal candidate. And it's interesting that they're coming through Nashville, and also that we're, getting people like Haven Hamilton to support, although it's kind of just like, oh, it's a big thing. Of course I'll be there.
Right.
Yeah. But this episode we're talking about that, but on the next episode, we're going a little bit down the conservative route. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I would say so. Yeah. So for our next episode, so we are off. Oh boy, our alphabetical road trip is nearing its end.
Dan, you say that, but I feel like America really like backloaded a lot of the state names. Wyoming, Virginia, West Virginia, Washington. Of course, we have Washington, D.C. I think I'm missing a few, but.
No, yeah, I mean, Wyoming, we're heading to Texas, and I would, they say everything is bigger in Texas. I don't know about this movie though. So we're bouncing back. We're going back to 1983, the same year that Big Chill saw its release, and I don't think that it was fighting for audiences with Lone Wolf McQuade. Directed by Steve Carver, starring Chuck Norris, David Carradine, Barbara Carrera, LQ Jones pops up in there,
right.
Of course, Aaron Norris. But yes, we are dipping into the Chuck Norris filmography, I believe, for the first time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let's see. After Texas, what's after Texas? Is that Utah already? Or do we still have more T's? Because I'm trying to think, does Robert Carradine show up in any Utah movies?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so. The Long Riders, maybe? No.
Well,
no.
That's a conversation for another time.
Lone
Wolf McQuade, though.
I think it's just a Carradine twofer. Yeah, so Lone Wolf McQuade, we'll talk about it on the next episode.
There's so many movies that take place in Texas and are doing Lone Wolf McQuade, and I love it.
We are doing Lone Wolf McQuade. We've done other ones though, and also, I mean, I guess just transparently, like, yeah, we could do Giant, but 3 hours.
We just did Nashville. We just did Badlands. What did we do before Badlands? I think another one. Big Chill. So it's like we need a little bit of a breather. We need a
palate cleanser.
We need to crack open a domestic beer and a can of Squirt. I think he's got like bottles of Squirt in his little house and kick back and enjoy some Lone Wolf McQuade.
Yeah, what else to do? It's the summer.
Well, Dan, as you're riding on the back of Jeff Goldblum's giant tricycle, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.